Assalamu alaikum, everyone, and welcome to our sixth night of our online Muharram program. I hope you are all well. So I'll just correct my screen. Okay, and let's get started. أعوذ بالله من الشيطان الرجيم بسم الله الرحمن الرحيم السلام عليك يا أبا عبد الله وعلى الأرواح التي حلت بفنائك عليكم منا جميعا سلام الله أبدا ما بقيت وبقي الليل والنهار ولا جعله الله آخر العهد مني لزيارتكم السلام على الحسين وعلى علي بن الحسين وعلى أولاد الحسين وعلى أصحاب الحسين ورحمة الله وبركاته صلوا على محمد وآل محمد اللهم صل على محمد وآل محمد. For our sixth night tonight of the online program, we are going to be talking about Sayyida Zainab's two children. I'm sure many of you have probably heard of them before, and they are Aun and Muhammad. Aun and Muhammad were of the age of roughly 13 and 11, so relatively young boys. And what I'm going to do tonight is just briefly touch on who they were and a little bit of a background of how they ended up getting to Karbala. And then we're going to discuss from different aspects the importance of the role of parenting from two forms. One being the perspective of the child and the obedience of the child towards the parent, and the other one being the perspective of the parent and their role in bringing up the child. So first of all, Sayyida Zainab alayhi salam, for those of you that don't know, she was the daughter of Imam Ali alayhi salam and Sayyida Fatima alayhi salam. And Zainab, in its literal term, has a couple of meanings, and one of them is that she is zinatul ab, which means she's like the adornment of her father, so kind of like the jewel of her father. Sayyida Zainab had a very, very, very special spot with her father, Amir al-Mu'mineen alayhi salam. He spoke very fondly of her. He really had a very deep, soft spot for this a very, very pious lady. She is the sister of Imam Hassan and Imam Hussein alayhi salam, and they were all roughly about 1 year apart. So she was only about 1 year younger than Imam Hussein alayhi salam. Now, why was she such a valued member? There's no way in the world someone could know the story of Ashura and not know or have heard at least of Sayyida Zainab alayhi salam. And that is because much of the stories and traditions that have arrived to us today, detailing the events of Ashura, have been kind of kept alive through the initial struggles of Sayyida Zainab alayhi salam. As the daughter of Imam Ali, and not to say only because she was the daughter of Imam Ali, but I guess we all know the apple doesn't fall very far from the tree. So you might sometimes hear yourself talking or see yourself doing particular things, and others might tell you, my God, you're exactly like your mother, or you're exactly like your father. So most definitely she inherited so many incredible qualities, and the nature versus nurture that we talk about, she kind of had both, because she had incredible personalities, infallible personalities nurturing her, but she also had a great nature. However, we know that just because you come from a good lineage doesn't necessarily dictate that you're going to be a profound human being. So definitely Sayyidah Zainab alayhi salam, she earned this merit and this position very much through her own doings and her struggle and her jihad and her courage throughout her life. At the time of Karbala, she was roughly at the age of about 55 years old. Like I mentioned, just a year or so younger than Imam Hussein alayhi salam. And she obviously had a perspective to life where she was, as our imams refer to her, alima ghayra muallima, that she was learned without necessarily having to be taught by particular people. We have stories that say there were times Imam Ali alayhi salam would be out of town and people would drop a question to his house. And as a young child, she would actually answer that question and return it. And then they would see him and say, hang on, I just got an answer from you. And he said, no, I'm not in town. And he said, show me the answer. And then he would, send a blessing upon Sayyidah Zainab and say, that was actually my daughter that responded to you. So she really broke down so many different prejudices that existed in that society against women, and really right up until today. So many a time we see, until today, we still have this thing that we call the glass ceiling. We still talk about women that can't advance as much as men in our society and so on. But at a time where women were considered very close to nothing, she really stood her ground and proved through her eloquence, her perseverance, and her courage that a woman's right, as long as she's speaking the truth, is right up there next to that of a man. So the story of Imam Hussein very much did arrive to us today through the struggles of Sayyidah Zainab alayhi salam and Imam Zain al-Abidin. And she was a great strength and backbone of all the events that took place after that of Karbala, which inshallah, I guess at your age, you're not little kids anymore, just picking up a book and learning about the aftermath of Karbala is extremely important, because generally speaking, we don't usually mourn someone before they die. In terms of Imam Hussein, we do, because it's such the magnitude of the event of Karbala was gigantic. So to try to kind of squeeze that all into one night, it just wouldn't be possible. So we extended over 10 nights to give everyone kind of I can't say due right, because we're nowhere near that, but at least to represent a particular personality every night. Now, obviously, the grand person that she was, the very sincere and pious and spiritual and devoted and real mu'mina that she was, the real tahira that she was, this filtered through to her children. And in all events in history where we see a great personality was produced, there was always a great woman behind him. So, if we refer back to the Holy Quran, we see that Prophet Isa alayhi salam had Sayyidah Maryam. We see that, for example, Prophet Musa was taken in by Asiya, and a great woman indeed. We see that Prophet Ibrahim left his son with Hajar, with Sayyidah Hajar. So we see in every one of these great male role models, there was a great female role model standing right there, encouraging them and backing them up and giving them the courage to be who they were. It is no different with Sayyidah Fatima alayhi salam, because the children that Sayyidah Fatima produced, there's a key kind of lesson that we can draw from the entire parenting of Sayyidah Fatima at the very last moment of Imam Hussein's life, and I'll get to that shortly, inshallah. So obviously this filtered through to Sayyidah Zainab's children, and whether we're aware of this or not, Sayyidah Zainab alayhi salam was married to Imam Ali's brother's son. So Imam Ali had a son named Ja'far al-Tayyar, and he had a son named Abdullah, and Sayyidah Zainab alayhi salam had married Ja'far. Now there's a couple of, I guess, differing opinions about why her husband, Abdullah, did not journey with Imam Hussein to Karbala. Now, from all the research I've done and inquiring from particular scholars, it seems like we have two things that we can kind of conclude on. One of them is that in our primary sources, there is no definite reason as to why Abdullah did not accompany Imam Hussein alayhi salam. However, in our secondary sources, there are a couple of different ideas. And one of them being that he was either a blind man, another one being that Imam Hussein alayhi salam left him in charge of the affairs in Medina, because had he not, then Medina would have come tumbling down as well, in terms of Islamic wise. And yeah, so these are the main reasons as to why we understand he did not accompany Imam Hussein alayhi salam to the journey of Karbala. Now, interestingly enough, when Imam Hussein left Medina, Sayyidah Zainab accompanied him directly. So she went with him, and her children did not go with her. So Aun and Muhammad did not accompany Sayyidah Zainab when she originally left. There are some stories that say prior to getting married, she had actually registered this with her husband or discussed it or whatever it was, that if Imam Hussein ever left, that she would be leaving with him. Now, whether this was in the unseen knowledge that the Holy Prophet ﷺ had, or the Ahlul Bayt, this was a condition that she kind of had put on her marriage. When they arrived at Mecca, after some time, her husband actually traveled to Mecca, and he took along the two sons with him. So the two sons met with Sayyidah Zainab and Imam Hussein in Mecca al-Mukarramah. Now, at this point in time, there were some people that genuinely, out of concern, knowing the brutality of Yazid, they advised Imam Hussein not to carry on with the journey, that, you know, you're absolutely certainly going to be martyred. These people aren't going to spare anyone's life. We've seen their cruelty. We know what they're capable of. So, you know, don't worry about it. Imam Hussein alayhi salam's response was, there is a particular station that I am going to achieve, and I cannot achieve it without the position of Shahada. Now, was Imam Hussein alayhi salam talking about just his personal wanting to become a Shaheed? No. However, if Imam Hussein alayhi salam done one of two things, and his only two options was either to submit and just accept that Yazid was the Khalif and, you know, this great successor of the Holy Prophet, and we just go ahead, give him bay'ah, give him allegiance, and do everything that he commands. And if Imam Hussein done that, then we'd all have to follow suit. Or the other option would have been that he just kept himself quiet, and eventually they would have somehow poisoned him or destroyed him. And, you know, as they say, وَعَلَى الْإِسْلَامِ السَّلَامِ. Islam would be absolutely finished. So instead of being Husseini today, we would all actually be Yazidi, if that even still existed. And this concept of Islam renewing this, you know, peace that we have in our heart every Muharram, struggling to become a better person, trying to help the poor, all of these things that we associate with Islam would not have existed today. So sometimes it might look like, wow, he was really driving himself into some sort of suicide. And we have even had some people say and make comments like this. Looking at it from a very just logical perspective, where you just say, okay, he was going against 30,000 men at the minimum. Of course, he was going to die. Why did he do it? But when we look at the revolutionary effect that the death of Imam Hussein has had on the entire humanity, whether it be people like Mahatma Gandhi, whether it be people that literally revolutionized their countries just with the courage that they withdrew from Imam Hussein alayhi salam, we know that the impact has been phenomenal. There are some scholars that mention that one of the main reasons that the Shia are able to resist so much is because they float on two beautifully guiding wings. And one of those wings is the Shahada of Imam Hussein that gives them courage and will and determination to keep going. And the other one is the belief in the return of the Mahdi being an ultimate hope that you just never ever give up on. So very beautiful indeed. Now, as they journeyed to Karbala, the day of Ashura did eventually arrive, and Sayyidah Zainab alayhi salam got her children ready, and she sent them off to ask permission from Imam Hussein, as was the custom. Before they would go to fight, they would ask permission from Imam Hussein alayhi salam. Initially, Imam Hussein alayhi salam refused, and as he did with most children, or all the children that did, except for his own, and this is a very important thing to note. From what I've understood about how the battles used to take place, was that originally the companions of the Ahl al-Bayt would go and serve first. The family of the Holy Prophet would go and serve first, as if kind of like a sign to show that we're not going to prioritize our family over those of our companions. Our family will go and they'll become shaheeds first. In the event of Karbala, because it was certain death and they all knew that they weren't going to get out of this alive, they actually flipped this. And the companions went and gave their lives first, and then that of the family of Imam Hussein alayhi salam. Now, what's interesting here is the first person that came to ask permission from the family of Imam Hussein was Ali al-Akbar, who is Imam Hussein's eldest son. And they say he's the only one that he did not refuse at all. He immediately gave him permission. He did ask him to go and see his mother for the last time and his auntie, but he gave him immediate permission to show that I'm not withholding those that I love and sending others off for to become shaheed instead. So on the day of Ashura, Sayyidah Zainab alayhi salam, and this is how we know that her husband did support the Imam, because if he did not, there's no way he would have sent his sons. So there must have been another very vital reason as to why he could not leave Medina. He sent his two sons kind of on behalf of himself. So she sends them back out and she says, no, I'm not going to allow Sayyidah Fatima alayhi salam, or along these lines, to mourn her son when I keep mine with me. Or I'm not going to allow my brother to be in this position without sacrificing my sons. So one after the other, these little young men. Now, I mean, we've never really seen armor. We've never really seen swords. But from some of the stories we've heard, Qasim, the son of Imam Hassan alayhi salam, was a bit older than these boys, if not roughly the same age. They say he was about between 13, 14-ish. And they said the sword was so heavy, he actually had to drag it behind him. So just to give us an idea, when we say children are going out to fight, I mean, this is one thing, but to think that the other side, who was supposedly Islam or Muslims as well, attacking these particular children is something that's completely, it's very, very difficult to comprehend. Now, I mentioned a little bit earlier that I wanted to draw your attention to the significance of a role of a mother. In our day and age, it's quite obvious that the respect between parents and children, it's very difficult to find, if it exists at all, in many households. There could be many reasons behind it. Youth will tell you from one perspective it's their fault, they have high expectations, they don't do enough for me in return, whatever it is that they'll say. And then parents will come from a different perspective and say, well, they're so different to how we were, they're so disrespectful, they demand so much, and so on. You know, when we look back at the event of Ashura, some people call that particular day a university in and of itself. And there's a big reason behind that. You know, Ashura teaches us at any age. Last night, Habib ibn Mudahir, you know, whatever age you're at, you're able to take a lesson. My God, even Tufla Radhi'a, like the baby, you take a woman, a young girl, an older girl, a middle-aged girl, an old man, a young man, a middle-aged man, whatever it is, there's a lesson for absolutely everyone. But a constant theme that we see in this camp of Imam Hussein, because they must have all had very similar characteristics to be considered a camp of Imam Hussein and to be considered the best companions in existence. One of the things that featured through all of these people was their respect and their obedience to their parents. Sayyidah Zainab says, go. Imam Hussein says, return. Sayyidah Zainab says, go. And they just obey. They absolutely obey. The only time, this is one of Imam Hussein's younger children, that he actually ran away was just before they actually killed Imam Hussein completely. And this boy ran to stop the murderer from actually committing that atrocity. And he actually killed that little boy as well. So all of these children, they revered their parents so much, to the extent that Islam expects from us. When Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala tells us in the Quran, فَلَا تَقُلْ لَهُمَا أُفٍّ, we really take that for granted. And I've mentioned this in different places before, that when we offer someone, or if someone was to offer us a little tiny little drink of alcohol, there's no way in the world we would even attempt to take a sip. But when our parents tell us to do something, we have no problem lashing out at them, yelling at them, slamming the door in their face. But it's the same God. The same God that said, don't drink alcohol, don't gamble, don't do this, don't do that. He also said, فَلَا تَقُلْ لَهُمَا أُفٍّ. Don't even say, oh, to your parents. Go and do this. Oh, you're not even allowed to say that. So once we register in ourselves that just as this is haram by Allah, this is haram by Allah, we will definitely see a difference and a shift in the relationship with our parents. Now, this obedience, it does not come with ease. There's obviously a lot of trust that is built between the child and the mother. But one of the most interesting things when Aun and Muhammad left towards Karbala, and this is where I really want to draw your attention to the strength. And, you know, we really believe la hawla wa la quwwata illa billah. There's no strength or no might except in Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. And that's why the stronger your connection with God is, the stronger ultimately you're going to become in every scenario that you're faced with. I mean, just imagining being in a hot desert for up to 7 days now. The last 3 days, the river of Euphrates has been shut off. One by one, you've watched the closest and dearest companions to your brother being lost. You've now started to see your nephews being lost. You've started to see brothers being lost. You see your brother so helpless, calling out around to like an empty desert, just in case the call would reach someone to give them a chance. Is there anyone out there to help us? Is there anyone out there to give us support? And no one's responding. On its own, that's enough to absolutely crush a human being. But she had to keep going because she knew that after Imam Hussein, everything is going to fall on her shoulders. When she finally sends out Aun and Muhammad, the most interesting thing about this particular death or this particular martyrdom is that usually when a child would become shaheed or any soldier would become shaheed, the remaining companions and family would go and collect the body and they would bring them back. And whoever's in that tent, you know, they'll mourn their loved ones, they'll cry over them and so on. With Sayyidah Zainab, it was completely different. Once Aun and Muhammad had given their lives and they brought these children back, historians say that Sayyidah Zainab did not exit her tent. She did not even drop a tear. Now, at the end of the day, as great of a woman as she is, she's still a mother. she still has a heart. She still gave birth to these children, raised these children, nurtured these children, and she's watched them grow up to what we kind of aim or hope to see our children achieve. And that's that kind of shab, we say, like they've reached that kind of adolescence. And she continued that. Historians tell us that she continued to hold in her ultimate, her very, very, very deep inner grief, right back until she got back to Medina. And when she got back to Medina after the entire event and aftermath was finished, she entered into her house and she asked the servant in the house, if anybody comes, please just ask them to give us respect and allow us to mourn our loved ones. And that's when they say she approached the prayer mats of Aun and Muhammad and she took them down and she allowed her motherly instincts to mourn over her loved ones. But the strength of this woman it's absolutely phenomenal. And if you are in any state of weakness, confusion, doubt, if you feel like, things are getting too hard, my God, if we cannot reflect on the story of Sayyidah Zainab and draw strength from that, then there's really no story in the world we can take strength from. Now, I mentioned to you before that towards the end of my talk, I'm going to point your attention to the importance or, the possibility of having a huge impact on people that you love. Many of you, obviously, probably all of you are not parents yet, but many of you are older siblings. And, one day, inshallah, you will become parents. So we have to really try to draw a lesson from this. In the final moments of Imam Hussein alayhi salam, when all of the family of Imam Hussein had been martyred, when all of the companions of Imam Hussein alayhi salam had been martyred, he came towards the tent to bid his women and his children one final goodbye. Now, they say that, Sayyidah Zainab helped him get on her horse and she recited some beautiful kind of lines of poetry that, how cold my heart must be, or something like this, that, or who does such a thing like me, that I'm bringing the horse of death to my brother. So unbelievable circumstances. And I think as much as you try to really reflect on it, it's very hard to even grasp or fathom it, let alone grasp it. However, something interesting happened when Imam Hussein alayhi salam started to ride off, and I'm sure you've all heard this story before. She asked him to return, and she asked him to get back down off his horse. And he's like, what's wrong? Has anything happened? And she says to him, I need you to uncover your chest and your neck for me. And Imam Hussein alayhi salam, he does it. And she now kisses his neck and she kisses his chest, and she turns her head towards Medina and she tells her mother, oh mother, I have fulfilled the trust that you have given me. And Imam Hussein asks her, like, what trust? And she said, before our mother passed away, she told me that on the day I see you alone and stranded on a land, that I am to kiss your neck and your chest before you are taken to be killed. And we know that eventually that's because there was an arrow that would pierce him in the neck and hooves of horses that would ride over his chest. Salamullahi ta'ala. The reason why I wanted to mention this is because, whether you know this or not, Sayyidah Zainab at the age of her mother's death was about 3 years old, if that. A 3-year-old to hold such a memory until she was about 55 can only point out to us that the impact her mother had on her, the impact her mother left on her, can only be from a source of purity, can only be from a very, very deep connection that is way beyond the respect and the, obedience that we give to our parents. So some of us, our parents might tell us to do something. It's been half an hour. She probably forgot about it. Forget it. We're talking about 52 years later, and she still fulfilled that promise of her mother. She still remembered that promise of her mother. Whether it was just to bring back the memory of Sayyidah Fatima and remind him that this is for a greater cause, not to say that he ever doubted. So what I really wanted for us to draw from this story is that, courage is something that's really, really powerful. And if you are alongside the truth, if you are standing with the truth, then don't ever give up on your courage. The right way has never been the way of the majority. The Holy Prophet ﷺ has told us that if you ever see everyone going in this direction, and Imam Ali alayhi is going in this direction, follow Imam Ali. This is teaching us a huge lesson. Particularly in our day and age, sometimes we go through events, circumstances, problems where it feels so overwhelming. Everybody's doing this, but I'm not allowed. Everybody's going there, but I'm not allowed. don't worry about what you're allowed or not allowed to do, what you can or what you cannot do. Worry about what is truth and what is falsehood. And for as long as you're standing on the path of truth, then inshallah, Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala will always guide and make your way smooth. He will always guide and make your way smooth, inshallah. I would like to end it there and ask if anyone has a question to please unmute yourselves and go for it.
I got a question.
Yes.
This is kind of off topic, but I heard that when Imam Hussein was fighting in like war, the angels were helping him fight. Is that true?
I most definitely would not be surprised. We have ayat in the Quran that refer to when people are sincere, Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala will send armies of angels to support those people. We have other ayat that say, for example, if you bring 20 patient people, they'll be able to overcome 200 people that are not patient or that are not believers. So, you know, whether physically in whatever way, I would not be surprised.
Okay, thank you.
Any other questions at all? Okay, وآخر دعوانا أن الحمد لله الذي هدانا لهذا وما كنا لنهتدي لولا أن هدانا الله. صلوا على محمد وآل محمد. في أمان الله everyone.